Hi kids, today we get to make our first little review book. So I don't know if you made these in your previous class or not. I don't remember if you did these in AAF, but certainly by the time you're in calculus, you will be very familiar with little books. And again, I have kids in calculus as they get ready to study for their AP exams, pulling out their little books from past units. So these are a really good way for you to organize and have a snapshot of the unit along with your warm-up book and your notes as you try to review for a cumulative unit test. So, time travel back to elementary school. If you have a colored sheet of paper, and it does not have to be colored, but it's just more fun if it's colored. You have a colored sheet of paper and some scissors. I'm going to teach you how to make a little book and then little review book, and then I will show you what to put in it, okay? You ready? So the first thing you're gonna do is fold this 3 times, and we call it a hamburger fold, right? Hamburger, hamburger again, and hamburger a 3rd time. And look, it already seems like you have a little book, but in order to make a couple more pages for us, what we're gonna do is a handy dandy cut trick. So you're gonna unfold twice. So you folded 3 times, you did hamburger, 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 you're gonna undo 2 of the hamburgers. So that now it kind of sort of looks like a bigger book. Now this is the cut that cannot be undone. So be careful. So through not the pages, but through the binding, cut halfway, only to the middle here. Halfway to the middle. Now, grab it like you're like, ugh, I'm sorry I cut that. Okay, hold it. And now kind of make a hot dog, right? Kind of feeling hungry. Spread the pages out and back and cover up the cut. So you're like concealing the evidence of the cut you made. And then kind of fold it like this. Makes your pages kind of nice and sharp, right? Do you see how I kind of have a hot dog, right? Hot dog, nothing in there. Now you're like, you know what? I did it. I actually did the cut. So do you see what I'm doing now? See, there's the cut. Grab each side of the cut and say, yeah, I did it. I did it. But now spin this toward yourself, right? Or fold. See what I'm doing? Fold this. And now I'm going to kind of pinch these folds, make them a little bit tighter. And now look what I have. Isn't that kind of cool? And then I'm just going to fold it all amongst itself, right? So now I have what I thought I started with after I did 3 hamburger folds, but now I've got a bunch of pages. Cute, right? So on the front, now write Unit 1, Properties of Functions. And then after the next unit, maybe you get a different color paper and we write Unit 2, and we'll have a Unit 2 book. So if we were in normal land, you would be turning this in the day of the test. So we are not in normal school, so we will have a different way for you to turn in this book, but it is going to be due, okay? And we'll talk more when we're in the live session about how you're going to turn it in. But the things you want to do is fill it with what you need to remember. So I'm going to give you some guidance, but the rest of it you're going to do. Right? And you're going to think about material from the quiz, especially questions you may have missed or misunderstood or not finished. And then from our IB problem too, when you get that back, what are some things that was on that threw me for a loop that I need to go back and study? All right, so turn to your first page, and the title of your first page is Function Properties, and the title of your second page is 12 Basic Functions. Don't write this down. This is just directions for you, right? So think to yourself, what I'm going to do with this book is on these blank pages, I'm going to write things that from my notes, my examples, my warm-ups, what I remember from the quiz that I kind of messed up, anything on function properties. Now, here are some reminders for you. Here are the things that we did study with functions, right? We studied their characteristics. And that's also prerequisite knowledge from AAF, right? Increasing, decreasing, intercepts, vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, when there's a hole, turning points, end behavior. And the new thing that we learned, right, this year that you weren't responsible for last year was this idea of being bounded. Bounded, unbounded below, bounded or unbounded, bounded below only, bounded above only. So that's something new on top of all the other characteristics that you've already learned. We also went over under function properties what it meant to be an even or odd function. And we talked about that graphically. And we talked about that algebraically. Right? And we did have some people on the quiz. Be careful here. When you are asked to verify algebraically, you are given a function. If it is even, for example, you need to show that f of x is equal to f of negative x. On the quiz, we had some people saying, well, if f of 2 is equal to f of negative 2, therefore the function is even. No, you just showed that the function was even fulfilled the definition at 2, right? But you have to show it for all x. Go back to your notes, watch the content video for us to model how you did that. 12 basic functions you have a handout on. Make sure for your 12 basic functions you are very comfortable with their domain and range, right? Their characteristics in particular. And because the reason you want to know about these 12 basic functions is because then we went on to talk about compositions and transformations and translations of many functions, but particularly our 12 basic functions. So you need to know these really well and rate them like I taught you, we talked about in the videos, right? Your step function and that logistic function are lower down on your list than your linear, your quadratic, your exponential, your trig. Those are much more common and much more important. Okay, the title of page 3 and 4. So we've got page 1 and page 2, now page 3 and 4. Combinations and compositions of functions. And remember, most likely, which functions are you going to be combining in compositions? Most likely some form of the 12 basic ones, right? So for here, again, you're thinking about domain and range of those combinations and compositions. Can you recognize them graphically? Can you perform? Can you do the operation of composition? Do you know what composition looks like? Right? Composition notation. Right? Do you recognize the notation? Do you recognize when a function is a result of a composition? That kind of thing, all from your, right? Warm-ups, notes, homeworks, limits, and the IVT. Okay, so limits, remember you have to know how to evaluate limits from a graph. That's the old idea, the whole idea of bumping bellies or not bumping bellies. Left-hand limits, right-hand limits, when the limits do not exist. And then the IVT, right? You have to know the conditions of the IVT, that you have to have a continuous function on a closed interval and what that guarantees you, right? What does that tell you or guarantee about range values? As long as you have continuous function on a closed interval, what does the IVT guarantee you about the range? Relations and inverses, right? What does it mean to be a relation versus a function? Right? And we talked about implicit relations versus explicit relations, right? So that vocabulary isn't as important as graphically understanding when you have a circle that is not a function, and to be able to get y by itself, you would need two equations to get the whole graph, versus a cubic function, right, that you would be able to represent with one function, for example. So what does it mean for a relation to be a function or not? And then inverses. How do you find an inverse? How do you find the inverse equation? Is your inverse a function? And then, of course, the 5 fun facts of inverses. Transformations. Things we did with transformations, we did reflections. Right? What does it look like if I reflect across the x-axis, if I reflect across the y-axis, and of course for inverses, reflect across the line y equals x. So we did reflections. Then we did rigid transformations. Right? So my shape was preserved. Right? We went up, down. We went right, left. We also did non-rigid. Most of this was from AAF, right? Both the rigid transformations and the non-rigid, right? And the non-rigid transformations were vertical, stretch and shrink. And then the only really new topic is horizontal stretch and shrink. And that was the last thing really that we did, right? So this was really the only new objective on this whole page. Honestly, most of this was prerequisite knowledge. It's just faster and a little deeper with some more expectation for your manipulative algebra skills. Don't forget that for transformations, you could be asked about transformations, right? If I give you an equation of a transformation, could you describe in words? IB loves this. They love to ask you to describe in words. AP doesn't need you to do that, to describe it in words. They just need you to understand what's happened. But IB loves to have you write out the transformations in words. So you're going to need to make sure you can practice that. Make sure also when you're graphing transformations that you just have a visual idea, hopefully from this description in words, as to what's happened. Right? So you can visualize the transformations, but you can also graph point by point. And if you look at the content videos, right, both when we did review of AAF transformations, we did just a very simple little 4-point graph and showed how to move and modeled what we wanted you to do. And we did it again with the new horizontal stretch and shrink. Just took, right, some rando graph, no equation, 4 points on it. You had to say what happened to those and graph what happened to those 4 points. All right. So this little book is created by you with just a little help from us, where we gave you titles and gave you a little, some hints. But in reality, review is personal, right? We've given you an entire unit worth of stuff. We have modeled warm-ups with you. We have sent you content videos with examples and explanations. We have given you homework. We have given you a quiz. We have given you an IB problem, right? That's an awful lot of stuff on one unit. Which one of those things or ones of those things do you need the most review on? Which type do you want to put in your little book? What things do you tend to forget or make mistakes on, right? So one student's little review book might look, the contents, right? The pages are all the same, but the contents might be different from somebody else's because their review process needed to be slightly different. So we have given you a review handout to force you to practice certain problems, but this little book should be for you. It should be personal, and you should be able to look back at it, right, at some point months from now and flip through that and go, oh yeah, that's what we did. Oh yeah, I kind of remember these things from Unit 1. That's how you get ready for a cumulative math, a bigger high stakes, like an AP or an IB exam. You pull out lots of little reminders, okay? So again, we will talk to you in our live session about how we are going to collect these little review books, but it is important that you make one. And if you don't remember the directions, you get to rewind and watch again as I create a cute little review book. All right, take care, and I will see you soon.